we speak on the basis of the Pasha of the week, and also, as usual, our aim, the purpose of our talk, is not to have another nice drosha in the Pasha of the week. That you can pick up Sikhs and Maimorim and all kinds of places. This talk is not for the purpose of learning the Sikh, it's learning about ourselves. And that is very important. Just like we had the experience just now. And the Sikh is a wonderful thing. But do I know what I'm talking about? That's a good question. That's what counts. I want you to understand that one primary difference between the Geula that we experienced when we came out of Mitzrayim. You know, we came out of Mitzrayim, God took us out of Mitzrayim. And the Geula that we are now waiting with Mashiach. One of the primary differences is that when we came out of Mitzrayim, God took us out of Mitzrayim. We were enslaved, we didn't want to be there, but we were not really prepared properly for freedom, for Avodas Hashem. We didn't know what it's about. And this is why after we came out, several times we said, let's go back there. I don't know if you're familiar with this, let's go back there. Even within 7 days after they already, when they came out of Mitzrayim and they were facing the Yam Suf, they said, let's go back. 7 days after leaving Mitzrayim. After having. So this was going on because people were not prepared for it. And this is why it said by Mitzrayim, when God took us out of Mitzrayim, we in effect ran away from there. But in this coming Geula, we're not going to have to run away from it. Why? Because we will all be ready.
And we'll all want it.
We'll all want it. And we will want it, not our hands will bring and people will want it. Our minds will want it. So therefore it is incumbent on us to understand what it's about. This is what it's about. So, in the Pasha in the week, in general, Chumash Devorim, as I mentioned once before when we spoke on Eikev, Chumash Devorim, in general, is a very, so to speak, personable Chumash. It speaks directly to us on various levels. It talks about mitzvahs, or these are kind of mitzvahs that engage each one of us directly. So one of the statements in this Pasha is Tomim Tihye im Hashem Elokecha, which means Tomim, you should be whole. Tmim. And I'll explain in a moment what that means. You should be whole with Hashem. There are many interpretations of that statement, and some hold that this is a separate mitzvah by itself. Some say it's not a mitzvah as such, it's just a directive. In general, that aspect of this pasuk, Tomim Tihye, that Chassidus emphasizes, Chassidus pays attention to, is the principle of being atomic. What is atomic? Yankee Avinu. When the Torah describes Esav and Yankee when they were first born, and then they became bar mitzvah, it says, then you can begin to tell what the difference between them. And it describes about Esav and Yankee. Esav was a cunning, everybody knows what a cunning person is? Smart aleck, he was always conniving. He was finding all kinds of different pathways, ways to get his way. He was a war wager. He was a confrontational person. Confronting people. Yankiv, it says, Yankiv ish tom. Yankiv was a man atom. Now we know that Yankiv was not what we call a dodo. Yankiv was a very smart man. We know from later on, as we go through Yankiv's life, he dealt with Lavan, and he dealt with Esau, and he raised 12 sons. I'm sorry? What? The Pasuk said Yankiv ish tom. He was a tom. He was not conniving. But as they said, he was not conniving, but he was not a pushover. You know what a pushover is? You couldn't just fool him. When Yankiv came to Lavan, and he met up with Rachel, I don't know if you're familiar with the story, when he came to Lavan, he was met up with Rachel at the well. So he told Rachel that go and tell your father that I am your father's brother, meaning I'm your cousin, your father's sister's son. And Rashi over there says that one of the messages, the implication of that message was that Lavan, as smart and conniving as he is, he should not think that I'm a fool. I also know how to take care of myself. Even though my primary path in life is to be honest, truthful, not to look to take advantage of anybody. Ishtom. So the tnimus, this tnimus, the simplicity of Yankiv, and the Thomas simplicity, does not imply lack of understanding. It implies something different. And this is what the Pasuk says over here. Tomim ki masha should be tom. Should be whole. He should not be conniving. What is it about? Essentially, Rashi says that he should not be looking out and researching, trying to second guess. What second guess means? To guess without having any influences, any proofs. To guess what the future is going to be. Or to look for other ways, some signs. People have signs. The crowd, the stick fell down like this. Don't look for signs. Trust Hashem. Trust Hashem and accept everything that comes your way as it comes. This is how you will be with Hashem. This is how Rashi explains it. And I want to discuss this a little bit. Now, these terms, trusting Hashem, everybody talks about it. Says that. Trust Hashem. It's a very common statement. And usually that statement implies to the person, don't think, don't try to understand what's going on. trust Hashem, close your eyes, and go on. Like I mentioned many times, some people say, faith, emunah, that's blind faith. Close your eyes, don't look. And I explain all the time, there is nothing more bright than faith. Faith is not blind. The brightest insight that we have is at the level of faith. This is where we see clearly with our mind's eye clearly what the truth is. This is not blindness. This is sight. This is sight brighter than the physical sight. So when we say trust Hashem, what is that? And especially in the word Tomid. What it means is quite a straightforward principle. And it's important for each one of us to recognize it and to understand it and to relate to it. The principle is like this. We live in a world. A world by definition. What does world mean? World means that there are many things, many people, and everyone does whatever they want, their own interest. Every person is involved in interested in their own thing. That's a world. All kinds of disparate, separate interests. That's what the world. A world, you say, a world of people, a world of things. It means a whole bunch of different things. And in this world, and in the confusion of the world, we lose sight. And it's very easy to lose sight. That in fact, there's a certain underlying unity between everything that's happening. There are many things, and everything seems to be going its own direction. And when you look at it from that perspective, you say, all I have is myself. I have to take care of myself. And that's it. There's no other reality. That way, we become like Esau. Everybody that we look at, every person that we look at is a potential enemy. He's in competition. Maybe maybe he wants to. Like the Gemara says, the Mishnah says that by nature in the world is ish es reyehu chayim below. At least the Torah in the Pirkei ish es reyehu chayim below, which means one will swallow up the next person alive. This is the nature. This is the Yehu Chaim glory. And the Rebbe once explained this Mishnah. What does it mean? He will swallow him up alive. Swallow him up alive means that he's not going to kill him. He's a decent person. He doesn't kill any people. Well, you make sure that he controls him. That's means Chaim. You leave him live, let him live, but he will be under his control. He swallows him up. And this is the ongoing competition between people. That occurs, that happens, when we lose sight that in fact everything is permeated. Permeated is completely engulfed with Hashem's presence. Nothing happens in the world that is exclusively worldly and without Hashem's presence. And it is up to us, this is what the Torah says, it is up to us, to the individual need, to relate to the confusion of the world and start finding your way in the confusion of the world, or to relate to Hashem's presence. And yes, you have to go and do what you have to do. You have to go to work, you have to go and do your thing. But in terms, you make a decision, so to speak, on the moment. In terms of what's going to happen tomorrow, the day after, that I will leave up to the Medrash. When I come to there, when I get there, that's when I'll see what my path is. Right now, you have to know what you have to do right now. How else? The other option is, right, the other option is project all the time and look for what, the signs. Where is this going? Where is this going? I want to tell you the experience that we had in our journey traveling from Russia. We were traveling from Russia, and I can't even describe to you the conditions under which we traveled, but one thing that you will all understand. We were what was described as stateless. You know what stateless means? A person without a state. No citizenship, nothing. So that no country in the world was obligated to allow us in. We belonged no place. And we traveled. So how do you travel? You go from here to here. How are you going, what's going to happen when you get there? So the common statement was, when we get there, we'll see. It's the only thing we can know. Right now, we can go there, let's go there. When we get there, the Rebbe Hashem will show the way. That was the expression my father always Hashem used to say. Hashem will show us the way when we get there. And this is how we traveled for many years, for a long time, not knowing from day to day how we're going to make the next leg of the journey. And every time, the Rebbe guided us. Now, this was an unusual time and so forth. But in a person's life, see, this is an important thing. You sitting here in yeshiva and learning. And none of you are little children, basically adult people. And an adult has all kinds of things, or concerns about his future. And yet you're sitting in yeshiva and learning. How can you accomplish both things? It is important to understand that when it comes the time to learn, the whole world stops. Nothing's going on. There's no future, there's no past, there's no future. There's only the present. What's going on right now in this piece of Gemara, in this Mishnayos, in this piece of Tanya. This is the whole world. This way of learning, please understand what that means. Torah is something that Hashem gave us. This is Hashem's Torah. This is not something that we learn from the world. This is something we learn from Hashem. If while we are learning, we are concerned about what's going on in the world, then our learning is based on the world politics, how things are going to happen. I'll give you an example. I'll explain to you what that means, which we always mention. The Torah says, "Lo signoi," we must not steal. Now, when we are learning, when we are living in the world, we understand what that means. Don't steal. Don't steal from me, because if you steal from me, I'm going to steal from you, and it's going to be a habit. The real mitzvah that you're learning in Torah, don't steal, it's from a completely different perspective. You don't steal because you're offending not the other person and not the policeman. You're offending Hashem. In order to understand the piece of Gemara that deals with stealing, you have to be able to focus in and have that perspective. Who is offended over here? What was wrong with what I did? Then you can understand all the ramifications. If the whole union of stealing has to do between me and my neighbor, then you won't be able to make sense of half the things that you do. And the things that you will be making sense of will be all superficial, will not be the real thing. This is the meaning that Tamim means that you're constantly with Hashem. You're learning Gemara, and you're learning about simple things. You're learning it from the perspective, from Hashem's perspective. The reason that you must not steal is because it's Hashem's world. And Hashem's world has to be respected in this way, because Hashem is present here. That way you can understand what you're learning. But in order to do that, you have to be able to clear your mind completely from everything in the world and recognize only one truth. This is Hashem's world, and you are Hashem's people, and you want to know what Hashem tells you to do. This is Shoftim Kiyim Hashem. But this means, that's what it says by Yankee Ravina. Yankee Ravina says in a person exactly like this. First it describes Esau. Esau was there outside. He was a man in the field, and he used to go hunting. Then it says Yankee Ishtom. Yankee was a man at Tom. Yoshev Holi. What's in Yoshev Holi? He was sitting in the tent. He was sitting in the yeshiva. He was a yeshiva bacher. You're a yeshiva bacher. You're sitting behind walls. Why do you know what's going on in the world? How are you learning about stealing and robbing and all kinds of different things? About business transactions. Right? Yankiv came out of the yeshiva and he went to work for Lavan, and he knew how to do his job honestly. How did you get that? You were behind the walls of the yeshiva. Yeshiva holy. You have to be exposed, you have to be experienced to know how to deal with Lavan and how to handle his conniving. Yankiv didn't know that. In the yeshiva walls, behind the yeshiva walls, as it says that Yankiv, before he went to Lavan, I know you're familiar with this story, Yankiv and Lavan. Before he went to Lavan, he had to run away from his brother Esau. Before he went to Lavan, he actually went back to yeshiva for 14 years. He didn't have to run away. He had to go to Lavan. He didn't have to run away from Esau. I'm sorry? There again.
Why do they say he ran away from Lavan?
Not from Lavan, from Esau. I'm sorry. He ran away from Esau. He was able to hide in yeshiva a certain period of time. Actually, there is another reason to go to Lavan, to save himself from Esau. And also, Rivka told him and Yitzhak told him that by Lavan he's going to find his wife. So he had to go to Lavan ultimately. But before he went to Lavan, where should he have gone to prepare himself for Lavan? To go to business school. figure out how to deal with all the business transactions, all the business deals. Yankee went to Yeshiva for 14 years. With me. And that prepared him to go to Lavan. Because Yankee didn't want to get lost by Lavan and deal with Lavan at his level. He knows he has to be exposed to Lavan, but he has to know from Hashem's perspective how he should deal with these things.
He never slept.
I'm sorry? He never slept. And he didn't argue with Lavan. Lavan said, oh, there was sheep missing. Come on, you owe me a sheep. Okay, yours. He didn't want to get involved with anything. Because he stopped. Because he knew what comes to me, Hashem will secure. That way, and only that way, he was able to raise a family of 12 tzaddikim and 12 sons, and what's called the eternal nation. Right? Lavan doesn't exist, but Yankov's nation continues to exist forever. So, as I said, the message to us from this is extremely clear. The answer to all our worldly questions is actually found right here in the yeshiva. You have to have the principles that you learn in yeshiva, in Gemara, in Chassidus. This gives you an understanding of what life in the world is. And then you can deal with whatever comes in life. There's another. I said the whole Pasha is full of inyonim, things that are very pertinent. There's another mitzvah in this Pasha. And that's the mitzvah of what's called Minui Melech. Minui Melech means appointing a king. You learned that already. That one of the mitzvahs that even has to do when it came to Israel is to appoint a king. Now there's a whole discussion and debate among the very Chachomim, even in the Gemara and later on by the Poskim. But what is this mitzvah Minui Melech? And the primary difficulty in this is, in the Torah it says, if you want to appoint a king, you should appoint a king. And it gives certain conditions about this king. Later on, when even came to Shmuel HaNavi in Tanakh, and they came to Shmuel and they asked him he should make a king, should appoint them a king. Shmuel was very unhappy about it. And he reprimanded them. So there's a whole discussion. Is it right to appoint a king or is it wrong to appoint a king? So, when I point out the many different perspectives, I want to speak about the even appointing a king, also based on the Sikha of Rebbe, on two levels, on two perspectives. The function of a king, the way the Torah views a king. The Torah describes by Shaul HaMelech, the first king. What bracha did you make on it? By Shaul HaMelech, the Torah describes, the Torah describes that Shaul HaMelech was Mishich Moivomaylo Gobeya Mikol Ha'or. From his shoulder onward, he was above all the people. We have to be fools to interpret it on a simple worldly level that he was simply a very tall, handsome, big man. Shmuel HaMelech, this is what Shmuel HaNavi identified as a king. Somebody who is a big, husky football player. Oh, good, be perfect. He'd be perfect. Huh? Huh? What? What, the football player? Huh? It doesn't say exactly. No, I said Shmuel HaNavi selected Shaul. He says, this is the king. And how is the Torah described Shaul? From his shoulder onward, he was above all the people. So what was so impressive about Shaul? That he was very tall. You understand? Clearly, it means that he was above all the people, spiritually, intellectually. Shaul HaMelech, he was the first king. And to whatever extent you know, this Malchus, his reign did not last very long, 2.5 years. And there was a lot of difficulties in that period. And as a matter of fact, he was removed from being king, and David HaMelech was given the reign. A lot of difficulties there. But yet, the Gemara says, David HaMelech was mamish a king, he was the rightful king. The Gemara says that Hashem said to David at one time that you should know, however we'll understand it, but this is what the Gemara says. If your name was Shaul and his name was David, then you would fall in front of him. Because Shaul was a very great man.
And we would what?
Huh?
Then we would what?
Then David would have fallen before Shaul. He was a very great man. And this is what Shmuel HaMelech chose him to be king. Because the function of a king, by Eden, there are two functions. Okay? We're going to talk about two functions. One is that a king is supposed to enforce, make sure it happens, enforce the Torah. This is one of the functions, primary functions of a king. Because it's possible that people should stray, and the king, you need a king to enforce it. That's the lower level of a king. Then there is a higher level of a king. That the king is supposed to give the people a higher perspective. Supposed to encourage people to rise and to grow higher and higher. This is the higher level of a king. Because people tend to go down, so to speak, downwards, trying to get a comfort. You know, nothing is bothering me, everything is fine, let me go to sleep. And the king is the one who gives the people an inspiration to rise higher. They look up to the king and they see the king as the model and the leader of their nation, and that inspires them also to rise higher. These are the two functions of a king. Just a quick explanation of what we asked before, the controversy, because later on I want to speak about ourselves. The controversy between whether but why Shmuel was upset with the Eden that they asked him to make king, there's one simple way that it's explained. The primary thing that the Eibishter wanted that Eden should look for a king is they needed a leader who would uplift them, who would raise them up. When Eden came to Shmuel and asked him for a king, they asked him for a king because they were being attacked for war. They were being attacked. So Shmuel said, that's what you need a king for? This is what Hashem meant, just to protect you against attack. A king is supposed to look for spiritual uplift. This is what he was unhappy. In other words, Eden took the wrong aspect of what a king is supposed to do. Okay, let's now, I want to come back to ourselves, as I said before, to understand what in fact is the meaning of a king. The king is a mitzvah in the Torah like all other mitzvahs. And all mitzvahs in the Torah are always applicable. Some mitzvahs, like they have tefillin, are applicable in a literal sense, and some mitzvahs are applicable in a more subtle and a more ruchnizik sense. The meaning of king is applicable to all of us, they, individually. What is the setup? What is the function, the setup, how a king operates in a nation? In a nation where there is a king, then the king gives out rules, decrees. He says, this is how we are going to do such and such. When the king gives out the rule, even though the king himself has the full insight and understanding why he gives this rule, why we should do it this way, but nobody dares ask the king, why do you want us to do it this way? Maybe we should do it differently. What is the reason that nobody will dare ask the king? It's true because if you ask the king, the king will be upset and he'll punish you. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is because everyone understands that to get to know the depth and the full reason of what the king is directing me to do is beyond me. This great master, this great king, this great leader who says I should do it this way. Huh?
It's only like God-fearing.
God-fearing him. We're talking about God-fearing. Well, this is a Torah. In other words, even on the primary level of the king, that the king gives leadership and direction, the first thing to understand about a king is that every directive coming from a king is coming from a source beyond my full comprehension. This is essentially how Eden received the Torah to begin with. We discussed it many times. Like when Eden received the Torah, in order to be granted the Torah, they had to say, Naaseh v'nishma. Naaseh v'nishma means we will obey first and then we will try to understand. Because in fact, it is impossible to understand a directive coming from a higher source without first practicing, without first doing it. This is, in a ruchnistic sense, in a spiritual sense and an individual sense. This is the meaning of this mitzvah of appointing a king. We are all learning. I said before, we're learning Torah, and we understand. And each one of us, at some one point or another, except for you, is confronted with the situation. I know what's right, and I know what's wrong, and for some reason, I have a difficulty to following the right and and rejecting the wrong. Why is it? I understand it myself. I know it's right. I know it's right. I've seen it. I've seen the failure of the other way, and I've seen the success of this one. Besides that, I know it's in the Torah, it's in the Shoftim. What is the difficulty? What is the difficulty? Why do we need a king to rule us and see to it that we go on the right? And the explanation is that, just as we said before about Tomim Tiyem Hashem Alekecha, to follow the right path is not something that can be followed on the basis of the of the worldly pathways. Because if you follow, like we said before, you follow the worldly pathways, you'll have a completely different world to live. If you want to live in a Hashem's world, in Tam, to be always with Hashem, then the world is a complete confusion. The world presents a completely different picture. And in order to see your way clear within that confusion, you have to be able to follow directive on the basis of a king, the basis of a command, of a commander. A person individually to himself has to also commend himself. It's not enough to say, I understand, and now that I understand, I can trust that automatically I'm going to go in the right way. It's just not the way it works. I'm sorry?
Yeah, about all.
It is Kabbalah soil. But it is Kabbalah soil, this is why they call it a melech, a king. This is Kabbalah soil that gives us a sense that we are following the directive of something higher, something greater. Not just simply Kabbalah soil, I don't have the option to understand and guide myself. The Kabbalah soil that we are talking about, it's called Kabbalah soil Malchus Shamayim. Kabbalah, we spoke about it. Kabbalah soil Malchus Shamayim means to recognize that there is a godly kingdom, and that we are living in a world that's bigger than world. In other words, if all we are interested in is to make our way through the world, then we wouldn't need Kabbalah soil. Because what we are looking for is that we should live in Hashem's world. Tomim Tiyem Hashem Alekecha, we should be with Hashem. For that, we actually need to guide ourselves in a very strict way. And no amount of knowing and understanding will guarantee that we will be able to follow this path. This is the meaning of the mitzvah of appointing a king. Appointing a king is a statement that essentially, even though I'm living in the world, but actually I'm living in an area, in an environment that is bigger than the world, that is higher than the world. And in order to incorporate that higher perspective in my life, I have to have discipline. I have to really follow through on these directives. This is not in order to discipline myself, not in order to become a better person. It is in order to relate to this tmimus, to relate to Hashem's presence in the world. Otherwise, without this melech, like we said before, without this melech, you get lost in the world. Then you lose perspective and you lose sight that you're living in Hashem's world. I'm sorry?
What does it mean world higher than a world?
Like I said before, I explained the mitzvah of Tomim Kiyim Hashem Elokecha. What does Tomim mean? That you are looking at the world from Hashem's perspective, not from the world perspective, of Hashem's perspective. In other words, like you said, do not steal. What does that mean, do not steal? Not because the world doesn't like if you steal, but because Hashem doesn't like if you steal. So you're looking from a higher perspective. You understand? In order to live in this higher and truer world, you really need a strong hand, a melech, to guide you that way. So these are the two mitzvahs in this pasha, and this is how they are clearly correlated. If you need to live in the world Tomim, in Hashem's world, then you actually need a melech. And we have to know, been learning in the yeshiva and the absorbing all this knowledge, and we know what the Rebbe wants. Ultimately, after we learn it, we have to know that how is this going to be implemented? How is this going to be followed through when we go into the world? It's going to be followed through only if you recognize that the Melech is standing over us and telling us, yes, indeed, go this way, don't go this way. If you're going to rely on the fact that we know it and understand it, we're going to lose it. So on the one hand, this is quite challenging, both the first mitzvah Tomim Kiyeh and the second mitzvah of Tfim Tosim Olech of Melech. It's like superimposing upon us. On the other hand, this is essentially, in a nutshell, the gift that the Rebbe gave us when he took us out of Mitzrayim. As we're learning in the Maimer, taking us out of Mitzrayim meant that the Rebbe took us out from being limited to being bound by the natural world, that we have to find, so to speak, follow the natural contours of the world. And we can live at the level of a godly perspective. I mention this all the time. It was actually, I think in Hayom Yom recently, if I'm not mistaken, the Rebbe Rashab was once at a meeting, at a gathering from the government, they wanted to make some kind of a rules of how the yeshivas are supposed to teach Torah, intrude them how the yeshivas, control from outside. So the Rebbe Rashab got up and he said that we're making an announcement, let all the nations of the world know that yes, indeed, we are in Golus. We're not in our own land, we are in Golus. And therefore, the nations of the world are ruling us. We are in their land. And we have to submit to their rules. But they have to know that only our bodies were submitted to their will, not our souls. Our souls are free to live our life and our Torah life no matter where we are. This is a phenomenal statement. We are in Golus and we are submitted to the rule of nations, but we remain free. We remain free while we are submitted to the rule of nations. The government officials, he made a statement. He was being accused of being a rebel against the government.
The middle Rebbe?
No, the Rebbe Rashab. This is more than our time. This type of approach repeated itself throughout our history. And the fact that we are here today is proof, without doubt, that this is the only way we reach this point. That we completely disregarded, so to speak, the rule of the world. Even though we lived in their land. But we lived in their land physically, but spiritually we lived in our own world. This is the Ton Kiyem Hashem Alekech. We have to understand that while we're living in Golus, essentially we are in Golus only with our feet, but not with our head. So, in conclusion, as we usually do, the Rebbe should help each one of us that we should be able to keep our heads above the water. Keep our heads above the water, not to drown in the quagmire of the natural world. Everybody is going to be exposed to it. Huh? Yeah, the mix-up, the quagmire, the confusion. We have a clear path, where we're going, and then how we get there, that depends on the circumstance. But what we want to do and what our lives are about, that is clearly defined for us, that we have from the Torah. We don't need the world to define it for us. This is what this is all about. To give us the proper insight, the proper clarity, so that we can then enter the world with a clear picture of what it means to live as a Jew, as a Yid. Even though we're going to be confronted with all kinds of different circumstances. And the principle that living like a Yid means that the whole purpose and the whole meaning of living here is to live with the Eibishter. And the Eibishter will guide us through, like he said, we go to Mashiach and we bang on the table and we'll get Mashiach. Now he goes. Come on, I'm ready to bang on the table. All right. Yeah.
So you said before David's name was Saul, and Saul's name was David.
Meaning, like, their name, like, gives them power? Like,
I don't know. That's what the Medrash says about mazel. David has a different mazel than Shaul.
the name. Like,
Yeah, David has a different mazel than Shaul. Ilu ata Shaul, who David, listen the Abed common to That's our Lashon HaMedrash. If you were Shaul and he was David, then many Davids would have fallen upon him. The point of this is to explain that Shaul was a very great man, even though as you're learning Tanakh, it can be a complete misunderstanding. Understand? And when it says that he was a head taller than all his contemporaries, it doesn't mean that he was a head taller physically. It means that that his head, the Chassidus explains it is that the head is the highest part of the person. The head of the other people were on par with his heart, with his body. And his head was above that they couldn't even begin to understand what his mind is. That's what it is.
Also the shop, though?
Huh?
Also the shop, right?
Yeah.
How would you compare like a torch thing to like a goyish thing?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, how would you compare the torch thing to a goyish thing? You need to understand it better, you know?
The Gemara says that there were many kings in Maccabees David. And there was a melech called Hiskiyahu. Hiskiyahu ben Shimon. So it goes down, Hiskiyahu. And Gemara says that in the days of Hiskiyahu, they went through one end of Eretz Yisrael to the other, throughout all the children, all the people in Eretz Yisrael. And there was not one who did not know all the dinim of Tumah V'Tahar. Even Shem. Tumah V'Tahar is one of the most difficult dinim to know. In other words, this was the primary function of a melech. And the Rambam says to enforce das ho'emes. Das ho'emes means the godly rule. This was the primary duty of the melech. In time of Hiskiyahu, Ashur, you know Ashur, Assyrian, Ashur came and they beleaguered Yerushalayim. They surrounded Yerushalayim. They laid siege on Yerushalayim, no? Sorry? Not us, Ashur, Melech Ashur. Okay. Sancherib, Melech Ashur, Sancherib. They surrounded the city of Yerushalayim. This is how warfare was conducted in those days. You surround the city, so you can't go in and out. After a while, you starve. You have to open up the city, because the cities were all walled in. You didn't have airplanes or anything. So how do you break through a barricade? One of the things is you block access, and then you have to open it. So you last a day, you last a month, you last a year. Ultimately, it'll have to open up. So they besieged Yerushalayim. Ashur. This was after that he had conquered the whole world. Mitzrayim and Babel. Sancherib was a short-lived king, but he made havoc in the whole world. He turned the whole world upside down. So he came to Yerushalayim, and he told Yechezkiel and Melech that Sancherib has beleaguered Yerushalayim. So he said, I don't know anything about it. I only know how to learn. I don't know how to fight wars. This is the Neibish's thing, and the Rebbe should take care of it. And that night, a Malach came and destroyed the whole army of Sichem. So Perishah wasn't, it's in Tanakh. He says, that's what Gemara says, I'm going to sleep. She'll take care of it. It wasn't that simple, but clearly this was enough. All right. That's lacha. No, a malach came at night. I don't know how it killed them all out. Physically. A malach can kill them. Kill them all.